Hello friends, welcome to Learning with Edu4Sure. In this session of Python programming, we are going to talk about loops in Python. We will be discussing about while loop and for loop for iterations, loop control statements such as break, continue, and pass. Let us get started. Let us have a brief overview of what we are going to cover in this session. We will be discussing topics such as loops in Python, various types of loops, how to work with loops, while loop and for loop. Furthermore, we will discuss about flow control statements. Thereafter, we are having a small exercise for your practice. Loops in Python, iterating elements multiple times in looping statements. Loops are capable of repeating or iterating some specific lines of code multiple times. There are following advantages of loops in Python, namely, helps in code reusability. Whenever we put some statements in the loops, it helps us to reuse those code multiple number of times. There is no need to write the same lines of code again and again. We can repeat those statements whenever we put these statements in loop. It enables us easy traversal of elements in data structures such as arrays or lists. These data structures like arrays, lists, tuples, they contain multiple elements. Iterating each element in such data structures is easy with the help of for loop or while loop. There are following two types of loops in Python, namely for loop and while loop. Let's talk about for loop first of all. For loop should be used if the number of repetitions or iterations are known in advance. It is used in the case where we need to execute code statements until the given condition is satisfied. It is an entry controlled or pre-tested loop. And by entry control, we mean that first of all, the condition is tested for true or false. If the condition evaluates to be true, then the statements under for loop are executed. While if the condition evaluates to be false, then the for loop statements are not executed. As compared to for loop, let's talk about what is while loop. The while loop should be used when the number of iterations are not known in advance. In while loop, the block of code statements is executed until the specified condition is satisfied. It is an entry controlled or pre-tested loop. Again, the difference between the for loop and while loop is that for loop is used when the number of iterations are known in advance. That is, we know how many times the loop is going to be executed. While in the case of while loop, the number of iterations are unknown. In advance, we do not know how many times the loop is going to be executed. Now, let us quickly see how loops work in Python. At the start of the program, we need to initialize an iteration variable. This iteration variable is the one which helps us to iterate through a given sequence, that is a list, an array, or a tuple. Nextly, we need to check for the looping condition. If this condition evaluates to be true, then the code statements given under the for or the while loop are executed and the steps of the loop are repeated. These steps are repeated till the number of times specified for the number of iterations is completed or till the condition evaluates to be true. Once the condition evaluates to be false or after the specified number of iterations are completed, the loop exits and the given statements after the loop are executed. Given on the right side is the syntax for the for loop and for the while loop. In case of for loop, we need to specify the for keyword followed by an iterative variable, then in keyword and a sequence. This sequence may be a list, an array or a tuple, after which a colon is given which marks the beginning of the for loop or the while loop block. This colon marks the beginning of the looping statements. The given code statements under the loop are executed the number of times the iterations are given. In case of for loop, since the number of iterations are known in advance, thus till the specified number of iterations are completed, the loop repeats itself. Once the number of iterations are completed, the loop exits and any statements followed after the for loop begins to execute. While in case of while loop, instead of iterative variable, a conditional expression is given. This conditional expression is the sole decision maker for how many times the loop will be executed. Till the time the conditional expression evaluates to be true, the code statements given under the while loop are executed. Once the conditional expression evaluates to be false, the while loop stops executing and any statements followed after the while loop begins to execute. Let us talk about while loop more. A while loop statement in Python programming language repeatedly executes a target statement as long as a given condition is true. We can see the syntax of while loop once again. While followed by a conditional expression and a colon. After the colon, the looping statements are given. For example, we have a variable say count which is assigned to be 0. Then we start with the while loop. For while loop, we need to use the while keyword. Then, in parentheses, a conditional expression is given. The conditional expression is count less than 9, which means the condition is going to check for the value of count to be less than 9, followed by a colon. Then the conditional statement, if evaluated to be true, the following code statements are executed. The code statements given under while loop are print the count is count and incrementing the count by 1. These both statements will execute only till the count's value is less than 9. Once the count's value reaches greater than 9 or equals to 9, this while loop will exit and after which the print statement goodbye will be executed. Let's now quickly see how while loop will practically execute in PyCharm IDE. Now here on your screens you can see Anaconda Navigator from where we are going to launch the PyCharm IDE. Now you can see on your screens PyCharm IDE is fully launched. Let us create a new project and begin to work with for loops and while loops. So here it may take a while to create a project. Let us name our project as loop demo. So here we create our project. The project setup for virtual environment and other settings may take some time. As soon as the project launch will be complete, we can see our project in the project lane. Now here you can see in the project menu, our project loop demo is fully launched. So let us just right click on the project name and create a new Python file here. Let us name our new Python file as loop1. Now here loop1.py is started. So let us enter the presentation mode for a better appearance. Now here you can see the white screen mode. Here let us try to implement the while loop. Now suppose we want to print a table for a number input by user. So how we can do that? Let's get started. Suppose we take a variable, say num, which is input by the user with a message, enter a number. Now, since whatever user enters is in form of a string, so we need to typecast this into integer with the help of int function. Now, after this, we need to specify an iteration variable, say I, which is equals to 1. Now what happens next is that we need to use a while loop with a conditional expression which says that I should be less than equals to 10, followed by a colon. After which we try to evaluate the multiplication values given by a variable say result res. Here on, we try to multiply the number with the iteration variable I. Finally, we need to print the results. We need to print number with asterisk showing the multiplication with the I iteration variable, which is showing you how many times the loop is executing, with an assignment operator given by equals to, with the result res. After this, we need to increment the iteration variable in order to support our while conditions conditional expression. So we'll say I equals to I plus 1. This I will be incremented till I reaches the value 10. Once the value of I reaches greater than 10, that is 11, the loop will exit and will follow any other statement. Suppose say after the loop we give the statement loop finished. This message will be printed once the loop stops executing and the loop exits. Let us save it and try to run it. Now here on, you can see the interpreter is prompting the user to enter a number. Suppose we enter the number 2. Now you can see here the complete table of 2 being printed. 2 into 1 equals to 2, 2 into 2 equals to 4. And similarly, this will go on till 2 into 10 equals to 20. This is the entire table of 2 starting from 1 to 10. And after that, loop finished message is printed once the loop has stopped executing. This is how you can work with a while loop. Let's now talk about for loop. For statement in Python has the ability to iterate over the items of any sequence, such as a list or string. This, therefore, tells us that in case of for statement, the number of times the loop is going to iterate is known in advance, because ultimately the for loop will iterate only till we have any values in our sequence. So the number of values in the sequence is equals to the number of times the for loop is going to iterate. The syntax for loop is as follows. We need to mark the beginning of the for loop by using a for keyword. Thereon is the iterating variable, which helps us to iterate over the sequence, followed by in keyword, then the sequence itself. This sequence may be a list, an array, etc. Followed by a colon. Colon marks the beginning of the body of the for loop. Inside the body of the for loop, we have the code statements which will be executed for the number of times we have some values in the sequence. For example, to traverse a list sequence using a for loop. Here we have a department list with the values such as IT, sales, marketing, and production. For loop is given thereafter, marked by for keyword. IDX here is the iterating variable followed by in keyword, then the sequence, that is the list department. So for IDX in department is the entire syntax for the for loop, followed by a colon. Inside the body of the for loop, we have a print statement, department is, comma, IDX. So IDX is going to iterate over each and every value of the department list. So eventually it is going to print each and every department's value. Let us now practically see how we can implement for loop in PyCharm IDE. Now, let us suppose we need to print the names of all students in the list. So, suppose we have a list, say students equals to, then within the square brackets, let us give some names, say Aman, comma, Rita, comma, James, comma, Helen, comma, Susie. So we have some of the names of the students. Let's now try to display all these names without using any other thing except the for loop. So let's try to use the for loop and iterate over each and every element of the students list. So we use the for loop for this purpose. For idx in students colon, we try to print idx. Let us try to quickly implement this. We can see here, we have just iterated over the students list with the help of this iteration variable idx, and when we try to print this idx, ultimately we have got the names of the students as a result. So this specifies that in case of for loop, the loop will execute only till there is any value in the sequence. Once the last value of the sequence is displayed or worked upon, then the for loop will exit and any statement followed by the loop will be executed. Suppose at the end we give a statement, say print for loop exits. Then we try to print the names again and run the program. You can see after the Susie is printed, the for loop exits. That is, it is going to print for loop exits. This is the difference between the while loop and the for loop. While loop executes only till the conditional expression evaluates to be true or false, but for loop executes till the number of elements are present in the sequence. That is, till any value is present in the sequence, till then only the for loop is going to execute. Once all the elements of the sequence are worked upon, that is, no more elements are left in the sequence, the for loop will exit. Let us now talk about the flow control statements in Python. Flow control statements change the flow of execution of code in a loop or deviate it from its regular sequence. There are three types of flow control statements, namely the break statement, continue statement, and pass statement. Let us talk about each of them one by one. First of all, break statement. The break statement halts the loop and brings the flow control out of the loop to the next statement after the loop. In the case of nested loop, it halts and jumps out of the inner loop first and then proceeds to the outer loop. It is used in the scenario where we need to break the loop for a given condition. The syntax of break statement is the break keyword itself. In case of continue statement, the continue statement brings the program flow control to the beginning of the loop. It forces to skip the remaining lines of the code inside the loop and jumps to the next iteration. It is used for the scenario where it is required to skip some specific code for a specific condition. The syntax of the continue statement is the continue keyword itself. Lastly, the pass statement. Pass statement is used to execute nothing. That is, the pass statement can be used to execute empty in the scenario where we do not want to execute the core statements. It just makes the control to pass by without executing any code. If we want to bypass any code, pass statement can be used. The syntax of the pass statement is the pass keyword itself. Let us now see how these execute practically in Python IDE. Let us now see how we can modify the same program that we did earlier where we were trying to print the names of the students given in the students list using the for loop. Here, let us just put some conditions using the if statement. If idx equals to, say, James, then the condition should break, else we can continue with the printing of the IDX, which means if the iteration variable reaches to the value of James, the loop must break out, else it should continue printing the names of the students. Let us try and execute how it works. You can see it is printing Aman and Rita. Once the iteration variable reaches the value James, the loop exits, it breaks out, and the statement followed after the loop, that is for loop exit, is printed. This is how break statement works. Let us now see what happens if we continue the statement using continue keyword. If we use here continue statement, let us see how the output changes. You can see here, once the IDX value reaches the value James, continue statement is executed. When the continue statement executes, then the loop does not break out, rather it continues with the next value in the sequence. But for James, nothing is done. The James value is totally skipped for any execution. No statement is executed when the value of IDX is James, and the control passes to the next value given in the sequence. Therefore, in the print statement, we get Aman, Rita, Helen, and Susie, but nothing happens for James. And at the last, the for loop exit statement is also printed once the for loop exits. Now, let us see what happens if instead of continue statement, we give here pass statement. And let's see how the output modifies. You can see here again, once the IDX value reaches to James, the pass statement follows. Pass statement says do nothing, and the output remains the same with Aman, Rita, Helen, and Susie. Now, here you can see the output where we are getting Aman, Rita, Helen, and Susie. In case of pass statement, nothing happens for James. No execution, no modification is done to the IDX when the value of IDX is James. It is totally skipped for execution, and the value passes to the next value present in the sequence. The control passed to the next value in the sequence in the case when IDX value reaches James. The pass statement signifies that nothing happens for this specific condition. This is how you can now work with break, continue, and pass statements. Remember to use break if you want to move out of the loop whenever a condition evaluates to be true. You are trying to use continue statement whenever you don't need to walk out of the loop. Rather, you want to continue the loop with next value in the sequence. Similarly, for the pass statement, you are using pass statement when you want to do nothing for that particular condition and want to move to the next value in the sequence. Now, it's time for practice exercise. Given three numbers, a equals to 2, b equals to 5, and c equals to 100, you need to write the code snippet to write the table for a number in variable a. Similarly, you have to write a code snippet to check which of these is a prime number from a, b, and c. Similarly, you need to write a code snippet to calculate factorial of a number in variable b. You need to write a code snippet to print Fibonacci series starting from a number in variable A and ending at number in variable C, that is Fibonacci series from 2 to 100. You also need to write a code snippet to reverse a number, say 565, and check if it is equal to its original number or not. I hope you can perform all these exercises with ease. These are quite interesting exercises which will help you to develop your coding skills in Python. With great hopes of your success, I'll see you in the next lecture. Till then, happy learning and practice well.